who was always intrigued by the interest I would show. And I think it's probably whenever he feels bored, he would love me to have a discussion with me and start developing or designing a house. So 12 years back, it was his house in my hometown, which never happened. And then he said, at least let's build a farmhouse for myself. So he took us to a land which was in my hometown called Tanjore. He happened to be a central minister in the UPA government for 10 years. He was the Minister of State Finance, but a very simple man coming from a background of a farmer's family, basically. And he was personally involved in farming for many years. So he was showing us the technique of water divining. So I don't know how many of you have seen this. Like people would actually, they come with coconuts or they come with these wooden twigs, and then they take you to a certain points where the water current happens. So the minister was explaining me with the twig, it starts rolling, like it creates a kind of, it generates a effect which makes the twig rotate. So he says this is probably the right place to build. And when he was talking about that, he was a central minister, and he was out of power. He was not, his party did not come back to power, and and in fact he had also lost his local posting for some political reasons. So he said, I can now spend a lot of time, and it's time for me to introspect on what is happening in my life. So you can see somebody who is really kind of tending to look inwards. So this to me, like having talked to him for so many years, you feel that there is a shift in his thought process also. And then let's bring in this idea where he could actually be himself within a small space. He said 500 square feet, 50 square meters, small farmhouse. So where we could actually, he said, you are free to take it forward from there. So we just took this up, and then the second sketch, what you're seeing is the first sketch I was just drawing when I was talking to him, talking about the intersection, when he spoke about these intersections and all that, and then very intuitively happening. So you are standing at site and then trying to kind of think there. From there, it starts developing into spaces, and then what you see to your right side, it's a kind of canyon. And then Tanjore is blessed with very good red earth, so you will be able to develop like rammed earth structure. And having come from Oroville, doing rammed earth is like it's your calling. So whenever you find an opportunity, you would want to jump and build with earth. So for people who do not know rammed earth, it's a construction technique which involves red earth. In India, at least, or in the local context, it's red earth, which is very good. And you mix only like a 5% of cement, and then you create a formwork. You pour the earth and the cement mix, and then you ram it. The compressive strength is achieved by means of the ramming. So there is nothing a burning process involved in it. So it is again a very environmental friendly step. So what next? So it's common to build with rammed earth. So how is that we can be different is the question we were asking ourselves. As to, we are going to work with rammed earth, but how can we create interest? See, normally if you look at buildings made out of rammed earth, unless they are built in some villages where they do hand ramming without formwork and all that, most of them would have very orthogonal platforms. Even if you have to do a corner formwork, it becomes very expensive. So you have to build a separate formwork only for the corners. So for us, the question was, how do we kind of rework on this idea of formwork and build something very, very natural and more fluid? So we thought, okay, we've been working with bricks for vaulting and all that. So we said, why not build with bricks? And these bricks are basically as formwork, not as a construction material. So you take the brick, and then I'm sure you would have seen the way people would have been stacking bricks on site, where they get like 1 meter thick or whatever. They just stack bricks and then use it for construction process. So I was always fascinated looking at these images. So we said, if that is the case, what if we arrange bricks in a very, very organic way, where you create a form, you pour the earth, ram it, remove it, and then you remove the bricks, because they are not bound by mortar. They are just bricks by themselves. So you can remove them and then kind of recreate another farm and then keep building like that. So I think that was one of the process which was kind of exciting us. So when this idea came, and then we had some old structures from which we said we will take all the stone, because Tanjore is surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of temples. So you will find locally a lot of structures having these stone footing and all that. We said, let's get them and then create like a podium. We dig earth, which is a normal process, which is the education coming from Oracle. See, what when we build with earth, we dig a pit, we store water into that pit, and then you build using that earth. So in this case, what we did was you dig the pit, you build right above it. So you have a water body, and then you kind of plot this building again within this water body. So that was the entire process. And then I told the client that we will be working with materials only which are available within the site, or within the reach, very close proximity. So that's how the entire idea developed. And then this kind of then took us to hi, hi, some disturbances somewhere.
Yes, until I've muted that.
Hi. Yeah. Okay. Hi. Yeah. Okay. So this was for an international competition, which was mentored by a very famous international architect, Japanese architect by name Kengo Kuma, for a cultural center at Senegal, West Africa. So the whole idea was very similar to the process what we were doing for that house. So it's a 5,000 square feet, say a 500 square meters cultural center to be built in Western Africa. So and it was also calling for how sustainable you can be in that context. So I think when we took up this project, we wanted to take a direction where we wanted to be influenced by the local region. So basically, and not build exactly the way locals would do. So you only take the inspiration from there. It could be the natural farms which are existing. It could be the built farms which are existing. It could be the culture which is kind of existing. So what we identified was you will see it's called the baobab tree, which is very famous in the African Casamanans region, is what they call in that. And then you also look at some of the traditional settlements which has these very interesting thick roofs which are made out of like straw and hay kind of structure. And these are called the tognas, which is like you'll be surprised that this structure is the highest pedestal given to the head of the village, like somebody like a panchayat head in our context. So in for the village, this is something, a symbolic structure which is built for the highest guy in the town or the village. And then if you look at the roof forms which are existing in this shows the importance which people give towards water, saving every small drop of water. So there is a courtyard, and then you have these kind of tapering roof forms which collects every drop of water. And then if you look at what women were actually making these places livable by through means of their beautiful handicrafts. So I think we found these very, very interesting. And then the tree gave us the clue of working with the structure. So locally available material, if you say, it is you get bamboo, you get wooden shingles, you get earth which has a mix of shell in it, which they traditionally use for construction. So these are some of the surrounding materials which are available for our use. And then we kind of came out with the expression which is kind of similar to it. It's like a collage of all these 5 or 6 images what you see, which then transforms into a built form. We are also talking about the wrestling, which is a very popular sport in the region. So we are kind of creating internal courtyards where people can kind of where the sporting activities can happen within these kind of internal courts. And then if you look at, see, for very interestingly, this is also a wetland. So there are some period, it's a kind of composite climate. I would say it's not hot and dry purely, though it is it is in Africa, it is not hot and dry. So we really had to kind of have certain gestures. Like there were a few months when it was really hot. At that time, it was also humid. So we cannot build the way like we were building in Rajasthan, like you completely seal surfaces off or whatever. So the strategy needs to be, there are certain months for the sake of thermal comfort, you might have to have certain things opening out. So if you look at these forms, these are shapes which are completely enclosed, and you also have something which is in shade. Like during the humid months, these places, the in-between places becomes really, really active climatically. So that's the kind of strategy you are trying to adopt. And in fact, a thick roof built out of wooden shingles and bamboo structure as a second layer completely shades the entire structure, allowing kind of structural cooling to happen. And then these are some of the research works we do at many schools. This is coming from Care School of Architecture at Trichy. So where we also kind of work a lot with nature, if you see, and we misuse the head of the department. The students' artwork goes directly to the head of the department as a handicraft. So it's a very lively environment, and we kind of work with a lot of passion with students there. A small town, but you can find a lot of passion coming from the students. So where we work with a lot of inspiration coming from nature, we study elements from nature, and then we kind of try to understand the geometry. Again, the process which comes from our office thought processes, where we kind of work with the geometry, form, structure, and material. So these are even like first semester, second semester works where you actually kind of understand the geometry, and then you allow them to work with the geometry with different materials, making them a first semester student touch different materials. So I think it gives you a world of confidence when you start touching materials very early. So I think that's one of the strong intent which we have been setting people. So even in your studio, I think it is very important for you to come with physical models very early in the design process. So because it's not about the mind conceiving everything. Sometimes when you mix these medium, when you have different tools to work with, you start identifying, you start finding things by making things. So give importance to the process where you actually touch things, get different materials, put your hands, make them dirty, and build using them. And then if you look at these 4 5 slides to the right side, it's a model making studio which Deepak and I were handling. And then we get crazy sometimes. So model making, you just convert them into a questioning session where we make this, we question the idea of order which was existing in the traditional building, and then how do you take these elements very playfully on a very lighter note. So we just spent like half an hour to kind of let us and the student kind of just do question the order, and then organize things in a very interesting way, which leads to another direction altogether. So from there, I think let's move on to one of the most important works which we have been working for the last 4 or 5 years, which initially was an idea to question catenary or understand catenary structures. Catenary is a certain geometry coming from nature again, which it's catenary is a form active structure again, but we went into much complex form active thought processes, and then which eventually led us to a vaulting technique called the timbral vaulting. So let's start from there. So this is always on a lighter note. I keep showing this slide of photograph of my wife with a big chain hanging. So she was really happy to see that I was taking a photograph of her. And then when I revealed the intent that I was more interested in the hanging chain, she was super upset. So I think it's again connecting back to the slide where Doshi spoke about constant observation. I think what you observe, it really doesn't matter where your inspiration comes from, but what you inspire and what you kind of how you kind of observe and take it forward is very, very important. And having come from Auroville, I think we are used to wall structures, we are used to kind of understanding catenary structures. So she is a constant reminder uh, of a of a live catenary, I would say. So when you say a catenary structure, it has also got linear density. It is a certain geometry. I'm sure you would have studied parabolic structures. I'm sure you would have studied hyperbolas. You would have studied so many different uh, structural forms in your engineering drawing when you did your first semester. So when you go back to catenary is kind of very close in terms of its mathematical property and the form to a parabola, but it is not exactly a parabola. So if you look at the mathematical component, the formula is completely different. And if you see it as a form, it might look closer, but it is not closer to a parabola. So it works completely different. So what is the difference between a catenary curve, like if you are building a catenary arch versus a, say for example, a semicircular arch? So if you are building a semicircular arch, the semicircular arch or a vault would create something what is called as the thrust, which pushes the structure at the bottom. So traditionally, if you would see a lot of propping which would have come from the sides, or you will see a tie rod between the arches and the walls to keep them stable. And then you will also see a lot of thicknesses actually. Like you will see a brick wall which is 450 mm thick, sometimes even 600 mm thick. So you need a lot of material to maintain the line of thrust. So the important component in arches and walls is where your line of thrust exists. So if you see, it has to lie within the middle third. So if you take the thickness and if you divide them into three parts, the force line has to, the line of thrust has to be in the middle for this wall to be stable. So in order to get that, so sometimes if you're building a semicircular arch or a vault, it is still like a quite stable. The moment you go shallow, the, the thrust is much larger at the end. So you will definitely have to buttress them from the sides to make it stable or tie them together. But in a catenary, the most beautiful component of the catenary is that all your forces are actually distributed within that. It does not create thrust and it will push much towards the outside. The entire shape is such that it transfers the load very gently to the ground. So that's where the catenary kind of outperforms any other vaulting or arch technique. So it's a very interesting learning. So from there, what we did was catenary is nothing but a simple hanging chain, as I told you in the beginning. So it's a simple hanging chain, and you can get two sets of rule coming out of it. One is when you have a chain which is having the same length, and then you change the distance or the span. So it's a fixed length, and then you change these lengths. The other one is you fix these 2 points, and then you can have like a varying chain length. So with the fixed chain length and changing the span, and with the fixed chain with the varying chain length and sorry, so you get two different sets of curves when you're doing this. So the nature of the curve, it is catenary, but if you look at the geometry, it gives you two different geometries. So curiosity was, what will happen if we actually combine these varying catenary curves, and then will that structure be stable? This was one of the questions which happened in the process. So we were initiating this workshop with students, and then we were questioning a lot. So slowly we were reaching a point where we started kind of shifting towards using these two sets of curve to arrive different geometries, and see if they would still perform in a catenary. And then slowly, like you start studying, and then you start understanding things. So realize that Antonio Gaudi was actually doing this with a hanging cloth. So he was using like, if you look at the cloth like a chain, uh, every point in three dimension was actually having like everything was towards the gravity. So he took that as his study model and then developed models. And then when you inverse, like when you hang something, it is in tension. When you inverse that form, it becomes the most stable form in compression. So he was doing a three-dimensionally stable form out of a hanging cloth, or a hanging chain, in fact. So he was building like chandeliers using these chains, and then he was doing his studies with that. So from there, we got some structural engineers who were like one structural engineer from Tanjore, which is the next town, was a very senior engineer and who's very knowledgeable. So we got him to kind of explain the students on how the what a catenary is, and how physically you kind of plot a catenary. And then we even taught them the formulas to kind of draw them using these formulas. So I think if I remember well, it's y is equal to cosine of x. So if you use this formula, you will be able to plot every intersection in x and y axis, and then it gives you a catenary. Today, if you see the technology, if Rhino 6 has straight away, you can draw a catenary. You will be able to draw a catenary curve without going through all these physical process. But physical process is very important for you to understand how things work. Unless you feel the material, unless you feel the process with your hands, uh, for somebody to relate, it becomes really difficult. So I think it's always good to start working with simple tools in reality, and then probably jump. So if you look at it, so this was happening for close to 2 years. Like every semester we would work with different teams. And then if you see, I think these were this slide, what you see here is, sorry, this is something which was kind of closer to what we were searching for. If you look at this, so we started rotating the catenary curves in a certain axis, and then we were trying to vary the heights and distances. So using just two sets of curve as your determinant. So how do these fixed rule can be made into a creative process? So that was one of the exploration as well. Because you have set of rules, it does not mean you just have to get stuck to your rule. You just try to find a way to kind of come out of like forget the rule and then still keep working with it. So if you look at the last few slides, so this is one process. When we were making a model, accidentally we hit upon an idea of even hanging the brick like in tension, and then it kind of started leading us to very interesting questions. So mistakes in the process, or sometimes a crazy question which can be completely irrelevant to what is happening, can lead to a very highly creative process. So we went on. So at this point, I think it was Deepak who was showing me one of the research which was happening in ETH Zurich, if not mistaken. A professor by name Philip Block, who has been posting a lot of these formatives, like you will see timbral vaulting. He was trying to kind of create these formative structures using timbral vaulting technique. I was really intrigued by the fact that the timbral vaulting was exciting from the fact that probably it's one of those very rare vaulting techniques which allows the tensile forces to be handled. 99%, 100%, you will have most of the arches and walls in compression. It's very, very rare that you will see a arch or a vault which will be able to address to a certain extent the tensile forces. So I just had very minimum literature, and we were seeing some images. And with the background of having built so many projects and having seen so many projects, so we said probably the best way is to start putting things. So these were baby steps. Like we were taking very simple baby steps actually. So we read that they use gypsum mortar, which is equivalent to POP in our context. So you kind of take thin bricks. These are like 20, 25 mm thick traditional brick. And this is one of the reasons why we chose that as a material, because the thin bricks are traditionally happening a lot in Tamil Nadu. Like if you look at the temples in Tamil Nadu, you see these 600 mm, 750 mm thick walls built out of these thin bricks, actually, layers of thin bricks. So was a local available material. If you look at and then we started using POP. The first image gave us immense confidence on probably we should be able to build the first layer. But a timbral vaulting is a minimum 2 layers, and then it can go up to, as per a very senior architect by name Peter Rich, he says 5 layers. So we can probably keep exploring. But if you look at it, as a single layer, this vaulting is not structurally stable. So this is only a form work, like if you're doing the first layer. So what we did was, before getting into anything else, we just had some, because I read somewhere that it was capable of handling the tensile forces, we just picked up one of the steel template which did not have a proper geometry to it, and then built like just a simple arch, like with using few bricks. This was built like in a day or day and a half actually. And then after minimum curing, we were surprised to see that we were able to load this on top. This is close to 150 kg. And if you look at this part, this at least has a geometry which is more catenary in nature. But if you look at this part, any other arch would have collapsed at the moment you remove the support. But to our surprise, we realized that at the weakest point, we were able to load, and this arch was stable. So it made us think that timbral vaulting is a solution to any complex geometry, which was not the case. So we had a major failure 6 months from there. So if we ended up developing real time one of the, like, it's a series of 7 walls which forms a circle. It forms a rib, in fact. And then we went on to build the first one, which was spanning 9 meters in one end and 4.5 meters in one end and 3.5 meters. 10 days of workshop built with students, actually. And then the entire thing came crashing down the day we removed the support. So it was like a baby dying right in front of your eyes. But the learning which came out of this failure was immense. So you were able to kind of concretize on certain areas, because we now know how to build the vault, but we just did not get the right structural form or the geometric form. So it was just matter of trying to go there. And then had an opportunity to build something in Bangalore in MG Road. I'm surprised to see that still standing in the last 1 year. I was expecting the government officials to remove it the same day. This is in Rangoli, where Triple ID had organized an event called Designeru last October, November, October, yeah, October. So we just happened to build a very simple vault, which was built in like 4 or 5 days, and lucky to have had the master of this technique, architect Peter Rich, coming from South Africa, who won the World Building Award in 2009 for a timber vaulting structure which he had developed. And he had actually used hand pressed tiles made by the local tribals. Actually, that's not even like the fired tiles what we have used here. So he had worked, which he says has a very low Pascal. And then he had hired a structural engineer from MIT, a professor, like his name is John Oshendorf. He is the professor at MIT, and he was apparently happened to be the mentor of Philip Bloch at ETH Zurich. So you kind of get these interesting connects in the process. So to us, it was baby steps. So we were learning this technique step by step. So we were trying to then build one layer of the vault, and then you kind of do single layer, see what happens. So we see some cracks happening. So we wanted to transfer the force gently to the ground so that the shape itself would take it. We didn't want to have foundations separately, wall separately, roof separately. We just wanted to find one stable form through the structural form itself. And then this is one of the earlier where we were able to successfully build a small scale timber vaulting. And if you look at this is the base slab for a staircase, in fact. And you don't need any reinforcement, or you don't need any concrete in it. It's just layers of brick pasted in different direction. That's timber vaulting for you, if you really want to understand the technique. So you crisscross the joints. The brick takes care of the compressive forces. The mortar takes care of the tensile forces. And the moment you crisscross these patterns, every layer will have a different direction, the pattern, and then so that the force does not get distributed to one point. So it's kind of transferred through the structure like it gets transferred through the mesh structure. And then if you see this, I think this is where we finally, after the failure, I think we came to a point where we felt we need few points anchoring to the ground in catenary. And then finally ended up, which the structural engineer BL Manjunath said, I think this is looking more stable and there is more chances of this not failing. So it's not that it will not fail, but then he said, or what he was saying, your initial exercise was right, your analysis was right. Probably rather than building them as one single loop, you should have built the entire structure in one go, which would have made it, it should have been created its own balance and self-supported itself. The mistake probably we had done was kind of detaching the structure, creating a beam, and then trying to rest in it. So I think these are some of the questions which happen. So slowly from the catenary, you start looking at a little complex structures. Now it started. I don't know if I've written the right spelling for the Gaussian curves. I think it's GAUSSIAN. Gaussian curves, which if you look at the works of Eladio Dieste, so he's somebody who was kind of uh, got this concept of varying curves. So I realized that whatever search we have been going through, Antonio Gaudy and Eladio Dieste had a kind of work done before that. So if you look at this, and then from there we kind of also started looking at the triple periodic minimal surfaces. Do not get bounced by the terminologies. These are kind of, most of these exist in nature. When you say minimal surfaces, a soap film, for you to simply understand, is a minimal surface. And triply periodic, because these are all mathematical terms which are coming into the situation. You're talking about positive and negative Gaussian curvature. So simple example of these. This is the Pringle chips, and what has the chips got to do with structural engineering or mathematics? So I think the Pringle company had studied this entire idea of stacking chips one above the other, because initially when they made flat chips and then stacked, uh, all these the chips inside the packs were breaking. So they kind of worked a farm which was very stable, and they were able to create these shapes. So if you look at, sorry, I think one slide had, I've just missed a slide. So where you will see stacks of the Pringle being stacked up. So they were able to have the packs transported easily without them breaking. Otherwise, like it was there to them. The person who's consuming it should get the entire shape and the form in hand before you eat it. So that's a very interesting process. And then this is the Gaussian curvature, which Eladio Diaste had established probably in the late 18 or mid 18th century. And he had amazingly built spans up to 150 feet, which is like 45 to 50 meters, not using timbral vaulting. He had actually used hollow tube clay tiles and then built using these. So the entire process is how you kind of nullify the forces at every point in 3 dimensions. So there is a positive curvature, there is a negative curvature, and then the resultant curvature, the points is zero. I think that's where the entire thought processes. And from there, I think we were becoming more and more aware and conscious of the techniques and the geometry and the properties. So we started slowly scaling it up. So this was I was invited in Oroville to kind of invited by a team to kind of teach the technique of timbral vaulting. So we had students and people traveling from all over the world who were part of this workshop. So this was mostly, we did not even have proper masons. We just had one guy who was helping us with most of the work, mostly built with students. So here what we were trying to do is we have been working with two catenary curves and a saddle form. We call the Pringle a saddle. So in this case, we just wanted to off center and see if we have three catenary arcs and then you connect the in between. So this is kind of tending towards a minimal surface structure. So that's something. And then with all these experiences, if not COVID, we would have already completed a structure which is spanning close to 18 meters, which is roughly like 60 feet. Without no steel and concrete, and we were planning to do it mostly like a workshop. I don't know if that will happen due to the COVID situation, but hoping that something would happen. And we have prepared the base and it is kept ready for the project. So this is a small dining space in a place called Agni in Sakleshpur, where they have created a kind of man-made lake, which is very natural looking actually. And then there was a small stream. And by the time I had gone to the site, the client himself is a civil engineer. He happened to find a lot of GI pipes, which he got it for a throwaway pipe. So he came and planted them between the streams. So it was already existing there. And then when I went there, what I told him was, let's retain them and then work with the structure, which is with that as the context. So if you see, I think these are the columns. I think you'll have to observe them very carefully. So these are the columns he had already done. So we just used that, added like a very simple basic steel framework. We didn't have even too much of structural consulting and also. The client himself is a contractor and a civil engineer. So we kind of keep taking the client who built those Mysore farmhouses. So kind of we know each other well, and then we trust our instincts. So just had very minimal steel framework over which we are using the stone slabs. You get these chabdi stones, which is like 1.5 inch thick, like 35 to 40 thickness, directly placed on the steel structure and pasted using araldite. So it just forms your floor. So initially he was thinking that we should be having a deck slab and all that. And because with our experience in the last 5 years of working more intensively in this, we realized that there is no point in having a concrete slab and then you put another flooring. The flooring would end up costing you like 85 to 100 rupees. And in this case, you're already having the floor as well as the floor in it. So I think that's where the entire process is, and then we should be like up with the vault in the next 2 months. So hope again, it's a heavy rainfall area, so we have been waiting for the rains to get over. So the base work for the vault will start in a week's time. And then designer who again like had a friend who was into wooden flooring, and even before this event, I think sometime he told me that he's got these 25 to 40 thick by like 8 inches long, like which is like a 200 by like say 6 thick wooden strips, which comes out as a kind of leftover when he does the flooring. These are teak wood, and he was asking me if we could actually do something interesting, or he said just find a repurpose the wood, and he just loaded me with 4 or 5 bags, like sacks of teak wood. And then when this opportunity came in Designeroo, we just got these simple GI frames going through. We developed a system where this could actually be. We were actually planning to build a vault out of it, but it was overnight installation to be done, so we did not have the resources, both in terms of people, technicians, and money. So we kind of ended up doing like a partition wall, which is basically what we realized was the compressive and the tensile forces were handled very beautifully by the wood and the GI combination. So it was able to shape up to, so these are simpler forms. I think in one of the exhibitions in architect Dominic's office art studio, we happened to make this as an installation again, where you could see how the material, when they combine together, starts kind of uh, like giving you it almost starts behaving like concrete, or like a drape, in fact, no? Right? And then it has a very beautiful stiffness, which offers you a lot of probability to make structures out of it. And then this would probably be the one of the last project, I would say. Another research which has been going on for the last 2 years, and it happens to be my own house. So what has been happening is that I was in a temple called Sri Mushnam down south near Kumbakonam, and then I was in this temple in the evenings around 4:35 in the evening, and the brilliance of the sunlight coming into the kissing the stone. I think it was so poetic that moment. Deepak knows the that we have been working on 4 or 5 different schemes for this house, like for the last 5 years or so. But I think simple, I made up my mind that stone will be medium of expression for this. I think it's a super heavy rain in my place. I don't know how long we will survive with the connection. Uh, so what had happened was Karnataka also known for its stone, because the entire place, the place where I have this property is called Jigni near the Banarghatta, where you are surrounded by quarries, but unfortunately I'm not able to dig out because quarrying has been stopped in this area. So it's been we might have to get some stones, but at least locally for the foundations and all that, we are finding stones like 1 kilometer away or 2 kilometers from the site. So it is a really exciting process. A lot of quarries have been closed, and you have a lot of leftover stone which we are using in for repurposing and different purposes. So this is the initial part of the research, where the whole intention was, I was just questioning you. I happened to see these very beautiful stone slabs. You call them the Chabdi slabs. It is very underused material to me, because people use this as a drain cover, and then when somebody sees, it's a drain cover, it's a cheap slab. So, but it was not the case. If you look at the structural, the compressive strength stone has, it's probably 3 times better than concrete. So the idea was, what will happen if we combine 2 or 3 slabs and then you interlock and then you kind of work a combination. And then I happened to sit with my civil contractor, who said, maybe instead of combining, we can, it's easier if you get a thick stone like the way they build temples, and then you kind of create these slots and then you insert them. And then we went back and then sat with the structure. So these are some of the traditional techniques which people follow. If you look at the traditional techniques where they have these beautiful dotted detail, you will not even know how the column has been kind of inserted. And we wanted to just put blocks of stone as foundation, which I almost managed to execute it here. Uh, Bad timing, I would say that the quarry which is near my site was closed because the government, somebody dynamited the site unofficially, and it has been sealed for a few months. So we were not able to get stones locally from there. So we had to do a size stone masonry as an alternative. I think that's what. And then we are using lime mortar in the process as a mix. So we are just in the process. So these are initial images as an architect what I would want to do, and we were doing a lot of permutation combination. Just because you are working with stone does not mean that you need to work with these rigid systems. So we were trying to work with a system where you don't need cranes, but you just one person can actually lift a piece of stone, like to 600 by 900 or 900 by 900 kind of a scale, and you'll be able to do that. So we started doing a lot of this is coming from the structural engineer, Mr. B.L. Manjunath, where he said, I will take the intent from you of using stone, of interlocking stone, but I would restructure it in a way that it becomes least material required for the entire process, and then assemble them in the structurally correct manner. So I think that's where we reached, and then realized that we are pushing too much with the stone. We even wanted to do the entire roof in stone, but later he advised that because of certain tensile forces coming in, stone is very good in compression. You can keep adding stone after stone. That's how they build temples. But when you use a thin stone and then you exert a load on top, there is a tensile force which will tend to cut the stone in the middle. So he said probably in combination with wood, it is a much sensible solution. So we are just kind of moved there. And then this is probably one of the visuals. We are still kind of working with it, where these are all completely out of interlocked stone. And then we are at site. I've moved my entire home and office, use the COVID as an excuse to move to the site, live close by, like 5 minutes walk from the site, go every day. And we have started with these first mock-up where we have started understanding how to build with stone actually. So I've never worked with stone in the last 20 years. So the beauty of how you can actually get these brilliant crisp joints in stone, how you can interlock them, how you can push them through, and then even create details for glass to be inserted. It's like a very sleek groove, like the way you put these fixed glass. So you can just bring a piece of glass and insert it and seal the entire building up. These are some of the offbeat researchers which where we started understanding how stable it becomes when you just interlock them. And then I've been traveling to as many quarries as possible, and we finally found a quarry which was able to give us like a 15 feet span stone and like 2.5, 3 feet, which is like crazy. But I think there are like very few quarries which will be able to give you that. So in the process, you also get to travel, you get to see, you understand the process, how they even cut stone and work with it. And some sketches where I think Deepak was also part of this trip to Hampi with students from Trichy. So you kind of, stone became an obsession. So it's kind of constantly hitting you. And then this is for another project for a small farmhouse, which is to be built like 3 or 4 very small, what do you call it? It's more like a hotel suite unit, but on a large site, which is it's like a 10,000, 11,000 square foot site. And then the site is again like 2 kilometers or 1 kilometer from the stone quarries, where they have a lot of these waste stones after they have removed the stone for making bigger slabs and all that. And if you look at traditionally people in that region, this is actually the site and the surrounding. So you would see people building compound walls using this, no mortar in it. It's purely through gravity. And then if you look at this, here was our client. So he was the assistant commissioner of police. So maybe his structure made me look at a structure which is kind of bulkier. And he kept on saying that he loves boulders and rocks. And when we spoke to the people nearby, they said, we can get you boulders. So I was imagining the boulders to be like 10, 11 feet, like tall and big boulders. So the initial sketches were like just dreaming to build only with boulders. And then 2 weeks from there, somebody, when I was asking what is the size of your boulder, they said 1 feet, 1.5 feet, big stones. So it kind of took the idea away. But what we achieved there finally out of these small ones was something like you use something in the right geometry. So it's kind of pyramidal structure which is sloping at the base. So we even decided that we'll not be using mortar. You can use soil, the local soil as mortar, and use lime to just seal the joints. So you don't even need cement mortar or whatever. But then you do walls which are like 6 feet, like 1.8 meters at the bottom, and then going up to 450 or 600 at the top. And then the plan is curvilinear, so the entire farm is stable. However, the lateral movements or whatever happens, the structure becomes stable without any mortar. So these are some of the things where you are evolving as an architect, and then trying to look at the local context, the way people built traditionally, and then combining with the geometrical knowledge and the structural knowledge you are picking up over a period of time. The expression keeps changing in different projects. And the last project to talk about, again, going back to minimal surfaces, this is called a gyroid, which is a triply periodic minimal surface, again, which I was talking about, which exists in nature in a lot of systems. And then we are proposing a small dining space. COVID has killed most of the beautiful projects, small projects which are supposed to happen, but I'm sure we will be able to take off very soon. Thank you, and I think the search will continue. Just give me 1 minute break, please.
Okay, Senthil. Yeah, go ahead. Thanks so much. So while Senthil is taking a break, can you please be ready with your questions? Deepak will moderate.
Yes, I'm back. Yeah. So
Sorry, Scott, yeah.
Yeah.
So towards the end, it seemed like you rushed. Is there a problem?
It's raining very heavily here. And
okay.
Yeah, I don't know what will happen with the power or with the data. So I had to like really, it's super pouring. And I don't know if time permits, or we can probably ask students for questions so that we can revisit the slides. And then if they are curious about some areas, we can always go back to the slides.
Yes, yeah. So to begin with, just to begin the conversation.
Yeah.
So I think the slides for the Tanjore house, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was, I mean, the slides were really small, so we were not able to see how you had kind of worked with the.
Okay.
If you could zoom in and kind of explain the idea of the form work, how.
Okay. I don't know if I can. Let's see. Let's try. Can you see it now? I think you might lose the resolution after a certain point.
Yes.
Yeah. Is this visible?
Is that visible to everyone?
I think, yeah, the students can unmute themselves now and respond.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. So basically, if you have these shapes, you arrange bricks basically like the way they arrange it in a Brooklyn or whatever. So and then you arrange them in these different shapes. So you can actually develop for one, and then you remove the brick, and then you kind of redo this, and then you take this out, and then you build this. So you can actually keep building them in different stages or whatever, and then in different shapes. So that's the whole idea.
So what was the roofing material used for this?
See, we were looking at using the same brick to kind of create the, if you see this one, see, we were trying to kind of build with the bricks itself as a vaulting technique then further. So you do the form work, you take the brick, you build the roof out of it, you also create the landscape out of it. So the form work then again goes back into like different forms, like a roof form and then the landscape.
Oh, so the gray part is brick?
Sorry?
The
what
wall.
This one, what you see there?
Yeah.
Yes. That's like a brick vaulting. What we have been doing in the future projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, sir, as you said, making organic forms with rammed earth, the formwork and all gets expensive. What
Yes.
are other methods of making it economical? Like, yeah,
See,
bricks, nice way, but is there any other?
So we will still have to keep looking. So every time you are thrown with a different challenge, we still haven't found the next alternative to it. See, you can also use bamboo formwork. You can use bamboo, and you can leave the kind of the surface of bamboo or whatever. You can express the nature of formwork when you remove the bamboo. I'm sure you would have seen an architect by name VTN Architects from I think, if not mistaken, from Thailand, VTN Architects, who have done exposed concrete using bamboo formwork. So that's probably a good alternative if you really want to do something out of rammed earth. So you will have to make a decision. Like in this case, it was the flexibility what the formwork was giving, which kind of eventually gave us the form making. So you can also fix the form and then look for a appropriate formwork to do that. So traditionally, if you see, people would use in Auroville, we would use steel or steel formwork or the ply formwork.
Senthil, since we are on the topic of rammed earth, a very quick question.
Yes.
Someone asked, what is the longevity of this kind of construction? Because that's one thing we've been talking to our students or asking them to think about as well. When you think of sustainability and durability, I mean, those things, just not in terms of material, but economy and all that. How does,
See, to be frank, in today's context, we don't have labor. So which is throwing us the challenge of doing structures like this. Unless we as architects train ourselves to find local people and build it. I think that's what most of the cases I've been doing. So you are trying to pick up guys who are living around the site, and then you go there, you train them, and then you get them build the vault or you build the rammed earth or whatever. So this is one of the biggest challenges, and it is, if you want skilled labor, it is becoming a very expensive way of constructing. So that is one. Second thing is longevity. It purely depends on what strategy you are using. See, in this case, I'm using walls which are 1.5 meters, 2 meters thick. So even if there is rain washing it over a period of year, you don't see a problem with the structure. What traditionally we used to do is create an overhang or do a coping on top. So the edges needs to be protected for the rammed earth to be sustained. And if you go to Auroville, you will see structures which are 30, 35 years old and absolutely not facing any issues. If it is well executed, I do not see any major issues of corrosions or whatever happening. For it to erode. So detailing really matters. Understanding the material, nature of the material, and certain precautions, like you provide a overhang which will kind of cut direct sunlight and water, the rainfall which is hitting the surface directly. Then you are kind of exposing the surface lesser to the elements, thereby the life can be increased. So these are some of the small understanding which we pick up over a period of time. The top surface needs to be protected. Yeah, that the top, so that it does not receive direct rainfall and the sunlight. Which normally even brick walls, if you see the parapet, you will see the top of the parapet cracking because we wouldn't have had money to do the coping on top. So if we do a stone or a concrete coping, then it kind of reduces the pain which will happen on the structure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
Hello, sir. My name is Anjali.
Hi. Yes.
I had some questions about how you've used catenary curves to make all of those interesting structures. So the site where I'm working for this semester has a lot of rock around the area. So I was thinking of using catenary curves and stone to make structure over there. So I started working on some iterations, and what I was doing was intersecting two catenary curves. Whereas in most of the examples that you had shown, there is no intersection, or at least I couldn't see an intersection, and it looked more like a series of curves that were flowing.
Okay.
So I wanted to know if it's possible.
You can do a intersecting. Just study Antonio Gaudi. He has already done that. So yeah, if you look at Gaudi's structure, see what you need to do is you hang a chain.
Yeah.
You also hang chains where you are intersecting. So the moment you do that, the principal curve will go through a certain deformation. I think that's the most important thing, because when you invert them, they are going to be structures in compression. So when you have this pushing this, so I think this point is where the forces are being transferred. So what will happen is, instead of this structure collapsing, the chain would hang in a different geometry altogether. So it would kind of take the forces which is coming on this, and then the principal catenary will go through some kind of a deformation. So what you can do for yourself to study is get a lot of chains. Actually get these small chains, or even if you have pet at home, the dog chains are the best to work with. Yeah, so simple methods. You hang them in a wall, you just nail them, and then you keep hanging different chains. That you draw your sections, and then you just hang them and see. So from the first curve, the moment you suspend the second curve, you will see the catenary beginning to deform. So you need to work with the deform. In fact, if you look at how we were trained in Auroville, if you look at works of architect Satprem, is one of those big names in domes and walls in Auroville. So they would also hang loads in the catenary curve, because see, when you hang a chain, when you invert it, you are not just going to have the self weight of the structure. You are going to have people over it at the roof sometimes or whatever. So what they do is you actually hang the chain, and then you kind of determine certain loads, and then the geometry of the curve is determined after the loads are being added. So you can also hang loads at different positions actually. So if you look at if you look at this, is probably something, it is still not intersecting the way you're asking, but a starting point of if you look at this waste slab, so it is not a complete catenary, right? Yeah, well, it is just rested against a beam. It is neither touching the wall, it's just touching the floor, and it is the curve is not complete, which means it is intersecting somewhere. So when I have another arch or a vault which is in catenary, and then when this goes and hits that, there will be a deformation in the shape, and you have to apply that shape so that it is still stable. Yeah, just go home. Like I'm sure you are still at home, so you can hang different chains at different points, different heights, springing points, and then do a beautiful study of the curvature. Yeah. Okay.
Sir, I had one more question.
Yes.
So is it possible to put a catenary curve on top of another catenary curve?
This will be probably our next experiment. It is possible, highly possible. Okay. So we still haven't done it, but we are in the process of hitting that question next.
Yes.
See, again the same answer, that your bottom catenary curve will go through a certain form transformation. So there is some deformation to observe the forces which are coming on it. It is possible. If I'm not mistaken, Sagrada Familia by Antonio Gaudi has already done that.
Okay,
yes.
I'll check that.
Yeah, please.
Sir, I had one more question. Sorry, I'm asking.
Please go on. Yes.
Are catenary curves stable for point loads? So
see, if you have a point load, the catenary curvature will vary. The curves will vary. So you will have to determine certain loads. Yes.
Yeah,
whatever forces are there. See, timbral vaulting to be specific. See, other walls are okay. Timbrel vaulting is very poor with point loads actually. Like, or if not point loads, puncture. Like the moment you want to drill a hole, there will be certain points where the forces are traveling. So if you hit that axis, the entire vault might sit in one go. So you will have to really be careful about understanding this technique. It's not very good with point load or a puncture in the structure.
And so,
the vaulting,
like
not the traditional big vaults. Yeah.
Okay. I had one question about the last few pictures that you had shown, or even the next slide, 37 slide. How do you go about making the formwork for such a structure? Because it's so parametric and everything needs to be calculated.
Yes, it is done. It is three-dimensionally calculated. Every curve is plotted in reality. So I don't know if we can see this. See, like even when we are making the model, if you draw grids, you have a grid of every 500 centimeter, like 500 mm spacing, and then we plot it to true scale. So what we do is we bend thin steel reinforcements like a 8 mm rod or whatever to understand where, if you want to understand this profile is bent using minimum steel reinforcement. You can also use bamboo if you want. So to us, steel, you get bar benders very easily. So steel, and you can also use the same steel to repeat the casting. So it becomes very less expensive. Like it becomes really economical when you do that, when you want to do a series of forms which are similar in curvature. So what we do is,
Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask if bamboo had the strength to be a formwork.
Absolutely. See, what we would also do is, I don't know if you have some, you do these intermediate supports, right? It's not just a piece of bamboo which is bent and kept like that.
Yeah.
Like the way they would support any slab or whatever, you can have these casuarinas or bamboo, anything to support it vertically, just to see what you need to do is arrive at these templates. I think this is more, the curvature has to be arrived. So you make these shapes and then you support them tentatively. See, in fact, recent understanding for me to make this curve and support it is becoming very expensive. So we have realized that nature and geometry will never cheat. This had such less formwork in it. Like if you see it, between this and the first exercise, what we have done here, we had so much of support, but with our understanding, slowly we were able to reduce the amount of formwork which is coming into the structure. So we basically had like 3 or 4 curves, and then we were able to kind of go ahead with just couple of bamboo verticals to support the entire structure. So the geometry, if you think along with the geometry, it can be really economical, and like a lot of cost saving can happen there.
Senthil, a student has typed a question.
Yes.
She asks, is timbrel vaulting possible with chapudi stone?
We should be able to do. See, this project is going there. So we still haven't hit the site. So this roof, what you're seeing, we are potentially looking at something like a 10 to 12 mm, what you would use for your kitchen countertop. The granite, the 8 mm or the 10 mm countertops, which we do, the thinnest possible. We are possibly trying to work with that in this project. So it should be possible. In fact, architect Peter Rich has been telling me, Senthil, you take marble, you build, you go to a marble shop, get some waste marble, build it there. I think he said, looking at your passion, you should just keep trying this out with different material. So I'm sure it should work. Technically, it should be able to do. Only thing is stone has more heavy, like the density is really high compared to, so the self weight is going to increase. So the solution what we are looking at is use the thinnest possible tile. So if you're using something like a 8 to 10 mm tile in 3 or 4 layers, we should still be able to do that. Yes, it is possible. So you see the stone edges. So I think that's what we are dreaming about.
So if we were trying to make these catenary structures with stone itself, like not tiles, is it possible to do it with stone blocks?
Stone blocks you can do. I think what you should also do is, see, when you have density, then catenary, you don't need a catenary curve, right? You can still use it. I'm not saying. See, the beauty of catenary lies in the minimum material requirement. So thereby you're using less material, making the structure less economical. You can still do a catenary, not saying that it should not happen. Please go and refer to a project called by Philip Block, where he has done like 2 years back, Armadilon. Please note down the project called Armadilon. Yeah, and it was also in Venice Biennale last year, I think, if I'm not mistaken, last year or 1 year before that. So it is out of natural stone, carved out in 3 dimension. It has nothing to do with sustainability. He also accepts that. He said just for the fun of research and the sake of showing people the beauty, where they have used stone, 3-dimensionally carved the stone to the precise geometry, and they have assembled stone. It has no mortar or any glue at all. So it's the perfection of the form and the joints. So they are just using interlocking of the stone to create complex vaulted structure. So it's one of the amazing works I think you should see. But if you go back to the sustainability idea, it is too intensive and a process where you lose the intent of sustainability somehow. He also says that. So for the sake of the research, they were quite excited to do something out of stone and then see the form which is stable without any mortar, without any glue. So purely gravity holds the structure. So, and he has developed a software called the Rhino Vault, which helps you to analyze the vault structures in a very easy way, which is exactly what Sameep Padora from Mumbai, the library, was built using timbral vaulting. And in fact, Sameep Padora has used Rhino Vault to do the analysis. So he was talking about that in one of the talks. So in our case, I'm not somebody who would want to jump into the software directly. To me, it's more hands-on. We still use a lot of software, but I think the fun is in working intuitively and hands-on. Yeah.
So I had one last question.
Please.
Sorry.
No. I think we are happy for people to ask more questions. So do not. Yes.
So these catenary curves are in one plane, right? Like the entire curve is in one plane.
Mm-hmm.
If we take a cross section,
yes.
Is it possible to make a catenary curve that leans towards one side? Or is that against?
It is not a catenary curve, but you can do timbral vaulting where if you want to have like an eyelid, we call it an eyelid. So when you want to kind of project some part of the roof or whatever, timbral vaulting gives you the flexibility. And even sometimes a Nubian vault, you should be able to geometrically construct it in a certain way that you will be able to do that. It is possible. So what you can do is you can have one curve and catenary immediately next to that. And then from there, this can be extended out or whatever. So that's why it's called an eyelid, and it's not the eye or the structure. So it's just a lid which is pivoted from a certain point. Thank you.
So, Senthil, just another question, basically. So,
yes.
as I was with you on the phone, I think one of our students, I think Samay had gotten the work of Sameep Padora, the library.
Okay.
So, at that particular point, 3 or 4 days back, before I could discuss with you, I was under the impression that was reinforced from within. But you said that's not.
No, initially I was also on the opinion, because they had published a section where they showed the bottom had reinforcement, but it is only up to a certain part of the structure. Like if you look at the entire structure, they have done a plinth beam in the same profile of the catenary, not the catenary, of the vault. And then they have rested the timbral vaulting over a RCC kind of a base, like a plinth beam, like an extended plinth beam. And then this goes and sits. So till there, the reinforcements are done. And then this comes and meets. The third layer, what they have done was they have just overlapped. This is also the solution we had come up at some point. So we just wanted to run the third layer over the RCC or whatever, so that it looks like a continuous brick form. But because it was a research project, I did not want to do that. So we had to accept even failure, because if you're doing a research project, the whole idea was the brick catenary. So Samip Padora's structure, it has a kind of extended plinth beam, and then what comes and sits is a pure timbral vaulting.
Yes, yeah. So, but
Yeah,
that is
yes.
catenary vault.
That is Rhino vault structure. See, these are three-dimensional catenaries, and it goes into those minimal surfaces also. Like Rhino vault directly gives you the analysis and the form which you need to work with or whatever. So it's like an instant process.
Hmm.
So these are three-dimensional catenaries, I would say.
Okay. So we have a question from architect Anil Achar.
Yes.
Hi, Sent. In light of present day building codes to be earthquake resistant structures, will a pure structure resist lateral forces, or do they need ties for safety of occupants?
See, I think this is where rather than doing a simple catenary arches and walls, the kind of surfaces we are now working with, which has these complex curvature, which itself brings about the stiffness. I think this is where we are hitting now, like in terms of the form of the structure itself. So the moment you have these multiple curvatures in both the axes, X, Y axis, even with lateral rolls, I personally do not see a problem. We might have to consult a structural engineer for this specific question. But if you ask me intuitively, with the kind of the curvature we are working with, which bends in both the axes, I do not see. Rather than using a tie rod, the form itself becomes stiffer.
So I have another question basically. So some of this research is really complicated in the sense that you kind of need to have certain amount of experience in terms of working. You should have handled. You should have been in site for n number of hours to have understood how the material behaves, how the structure behaves, and all these things. So in light of the work that right now doing in the studio, there are a lot of limitations for students, especially in this COVID time. They are also not, we can there is no one-on-one interaction with the students. We are not able to be there inside the studio with them. So in terms of exploration, what do you think the students can actually do when they're kind of looking at a material, looking at a structural system? I mean, how can they explore these ideas sitting at home? What is your
let them understand. I'm sure they know their context now, and they know what is the material which is in their hand to work with. Hello?
Yes.
Sorry, okay, fine. So they now know the material which they are going to work with. So let them go and do a study for a week or whatever. Probably, I think for them it's good to do a lot of case studies on a specific method or whatever. So a material and methods of construction. Maybe they can shortlist 2 or 3 different kinds of approaches. They can see, if you look at what we have been doing. You picked up stone. So one project you are using the density of the stone to kind of do the structure, and on the other hand, you are working with a structure which uses the surface. So just by means of altering the basic technique, they can do some study. So let them make mistakes also. I don't think there should be any problem in making mistakes. So let them identify the methods, or let them do some reading and then come back. Probably they'll be able to share it with you, and you'll be able to take them through the process. So I think that's probably the best way to do it. So let them kind of understand you said, somebody said she's got rocks near her site. So if that is the case, what are all the methods in which one can build with rocks is one study they can actually do. Even if they don't innovate a process at this stage, because it's too early for them to innovate a certain process or whatever, or come out with very authentic construction solutions or whatever, they can probably choose the road not taken out of it or whatever, and then see how that can complement. So I think that's where the key is. So let them first come back to all of you with what are all the different things one can do with stone, or one can do with, say, XYZ material, whatever they are picking up. Like somebody can pick up bamboo, somebody can pick up, like if the site allows them to have a lot of wood or whatever, they can look at wooden structures. And what are all the different it's not about different aesthetics, but different techniques probably in this case, like different methods in which people have constructed traditionally, and then modern researchers. Like remember we were looking at filler block, and then we were saying that triggered interest because it had a complex curvature to it or whatever. So you then start asking a question on how they managed to do this. So I think
Yes.
that's probably the best way to do it. So let them have a list, or like say, I'm sure if you take stone, they'll find 100 techniques to do. But if they want to shortlist something, they can even say something which is really unique in terms of the technique, and then probably try to understand that method or technique in detail, and they can come back and kind of express that through their design. So when their design can evolve around the technique, so it purely depends on their comfort. But when generally I've seen students get stuck up when they start following a technique, like a technique based kind of design evolution. Generally there is a struggle. So I think a simpler method is let them come out with their design proposal and have few 3 or 4 techniques, and then we should be able to advise them on what would be an appropriate way of doing the structure.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
So
right?
I had a doubt about.
Yes.
Can I go?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
So when we are trying out study models, when we are trying to explore on materials, the scalability, once we start working with a smaller, we start working with the tinier blocks or whatever. But when we try to build it on site, the scalability comes to, a larger, it plays an important role. So how do we go about, using small blocks to get the more, when you try to build
I
on
think,
scale?
I think what you need to see, you cannot literally translate a paper model into a real scale model. A paper model to some extent will give you gestures or ideas that the structure could be stable. So if you are working with a material which has the closest like kind of property, I think this was advised by the structural engineer, Mr. B.L. Manjunath. Once I was making a model, so he said if you are doing a model based out of compression, I think use a material which is good in compression. Or if you are working with a model which is going to be more a tensile kind of what do you call, like if it's got like a form which is more towards the tensile force, work with fabric, work with cloth, work with material which is whose behavior is closer to what you are imagining in reality. I think that's probably the best way. So don't force yourself to build a model. Say for example, do not try to build that out of what do you call, like the boards. What you get, these thick boards or foam boards or whatever. So choose a material which is very close to its true property.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
sir, so actually, I studied the Sameep Padora's Maya So Maya library, and
Yes.
as Deepak sir told that they had used reinforcement which was connected to the concrete pedestals. Was there another way to do it, like without using the reinforcement? As the library spanned over 45
Yes,
meters and it didn't even have one column.
25 meters. It was a 24 meter span, if I'm not mistaken. Just go back and check it.
Yeah, I'll
So,
take it once.
yeah, it's 24 meters if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So I think you can do larger spans also. See, I think he was also doing it for the first time. Okay. So I think
Okay.
before they built the structure, they had a very simple mock-up which was done, but it was just built out of one layer. I think they also had somebody to do analysis using RhinoVault, and they were in a project mode. Like
Yeah.
it was built directly as a project. Whereas in our case, what we have been doing is we have taken this up for the last 4 years, where we are doing a lot of mistakes in the process and learning from there.
Yeah.
So is the reason why we were able to kind of see where you can avoid what, like if you want to minimize the farm work, where you can actually minimize the farm work. To him, it was a project where he had to build it very immediately.
Yeah.
So in our case, it was a different context. So what we have understood is, personally, if you ask me, his farm is out of the Rhino vaulting, which is a three-dimensionally complex vault, which calls for a lot of farm work. Like if you see the steel reinforcement, the process images also, he would have, I think, used like every 6 inches or every 8 inches, because it will help you in speeding up the construction process, but kind of very heavy reinforcement which was used. What we have learned over these years is that when the structure is in pure catenary, like be it a negative Gaussian curvature, which I was talking about in one of the slides, but when you have the farm in catenary, it uses it requires very minimum farm work, and then even the thicknesses can be brought really down, drastically down. So the farm is very, very important. Maybe had they adjusted the shape, the way it touches the ground in a different sense, I think he wanted to have this architectural intent where they wanted this the roof to seamlessly come and meet the ground or something,
so that the people can walk on the top.
That is the reason why probably they had taken the forces which will induce tensile forces to say 1 meter or 1.5 meters or whatever from the ground, and from where it was becoming compressive force, they have done this with the type. It is a sensible way of doing it, because see, architecture cannot be determined purely by technique also, because as an architect you will have so many other intents to address. So we should not become blind by our technique. So we should know where to play and like what is sensible. I think from that sense it was still sensible.
Okay. And so one more question. If I'm designing a wall similar to that, and it's a part of a water body, and the water body is it has still water, not running water, will that affect the stability of the vault?
I don't think you will have to really worry, because it's going to rain. Mumbai is going to rain, no? so which means you are going to have water. See, maybe at the surface level it might run over the mortar or whatever.
Yeah.
So if personally, if you ask me, I don't, with the kind of gradient what you see in those structures, I really don't see water hurting it. Worst case, in real time, if you are doing it, you can always do like the Antonio Gaudi or B.V. Doshi is the China mosaic brick, and then you want it inside out to be brick. But Peter Rich's advice to me was, he said, the China that in Africa, where the rainfall is scanty. Whereas we are building in a context where even Bangalore, Mumbai, or wherever it is, you have heavy rainfall. So you might have to protect the top layers or whatever. So just, and sometimes even depending on the span and the scale, depending on the heat, what you will want to control, you might need like a thermal barrier or a weather barrier. So this is a call which you can actually take. But for you to, as a student, you don't have to really like worry too much. If there is rainfall, there is a slope, and the slope will take the water down. So I don't think you really need to worry about it now.
Okay.
It is good for you to know, but let it not limit your process.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Hi, sir.
Pleasure.
Sir, so adding on to Samay's points, sir, like
just hold on.
how much does
can you guys just introduce yourselves before asking questions instead of, okay, yeah.
Guys, one at a time. Who wants to go now?
Okay, Tejas, sir.
Yeah, please.
Okay, and then Tushara
Yes.
had a question.
Hi, sir. This is Tejas.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so the timbrel vaulting, sir, apart from the minimal framework and the reduction in thickness of the structure, is there any
Yes.
climatic response associated with it? Hello?
See, it depends on, you can or whatever, if you want to thermal. Hello? Yeah. Can
Yes, sir.
you hear me?
Yes, Senthil, go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, Senthil.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, Senthil, you're
Yes, sir,
audible.
you're
Evolved like centuries back. Yeah, yeah. Also use a lime mortar instead of a cement mortar. Is there a time lag?
There was a
A bit,
bit,
sir.
now it's okay.
Okay,
So,
okay,
yeah.
okay, great. Yeah, okay. So, are you talking about the thermal performance of the timbrel vaulting?
Yes, sir. Thermal and as well, does it affect the form you make, the thermal or the rainfall?
Not really. See, in fact, this is an interesting perspective because most of these, if you look at the force flow of these structures, the way the water would actually flow, the pattern in which it will flow is the direction in which the forces will also flow. So basically, water and these farms have a very close association. Because one of my friend by name Utsav, who came back from IAC and who was helping me with the initial analysis of these structures. So he was making a 3D analysis using CV. We used to build this with Rhino. Then we used to take it to a plugin called Gangaroo, where it's called the physics engine. So where the mesh gets optimized. So you can first have the surface being optimized, and then we also apply the load. The moment you apply the load, the structure again gets optimized. The surface gets optimized. So when it gets the most optimized form, the way the forces flow over inside the structure and the way the raindrop would actually, this is one way you can actually analyze the structure also, for you to know how the forces are going to travel. So if you pour water, when you make a physical model and then you pour water, you will see that it is getting naturally channelized to a certain area. So the way the water leaves the mark is where the forces would act. That is from the forces perspective. Thermal insulation perspective, what you can also do is you can use, instead of using simple thin tile, you can also get these kind of hollow tube sections which are 1 inch thick. If you look at Wienerberger and all that, they give you these 20 to 25 mm thick tile with a gap in between, like a double layered, multi-layered sandwich panels or whatever. So you can also use them if you want to increase the thermal performance. So as of now, because these walls are high, like they go up by 4.55 meters high span, the volume is more. So generally thermal does not play, and you are using clay tiles. So comparatively, like you do not have much of what do you call the heat incident sun and the heat generated through that traveling into the wall. So you will have to look at also the way the openings can happen, how the heat can then be evaluated. Like you cannot solve every problem using one technique. So you will have to kind of work with your design in such a way that you will also be able to improve the ventilation component. So if you look at this slide where you see these slits which has these glass openings which are basically like glass louvers or whatever, so you still have the hot air kind of moving out of the space, so you have a draft coming from a lower level, the cooler air comes, the air draft, and then you have these the form itself allowing you to allow hot air to escape through the roof. So I think design holistically will allow you to solve other issues also.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes. Yeah.
So, hi, sir. I'm Tushara.
Hi. Yes.
So, like, sir, in your PPT, you showed so many different materials that you used. So I was thinking with my respect to my concept in AD, so how these structural forms and joinery can be used with respect to unconventional materials like plastic. Like currently it's been an issue. So like when I was looking through case studies, like there are very few projects that have been used as a plastic as a material. So thoughts on like using the material plastic.
So just to add to Tushara's question, there's in the chat box.
How do you what are you using and what is that you're doing? Yes. How come popping up for me? Can somebody read that out, please?
Responding. Okay. It says.
Hi. Can somebody read out what is in the chat box?
Yeah, Senthil. So Pavitra from the thesis semester writes. Can you hear me? She says, I am exploring how upcycled plastic can be used as a building material. It's similar to what Tushara asked. That's why I bring it up. How do I approach?
I can hear you.
Yeah. How do I approach this material?
Okay.
Because there are not many projects I can study. So which is pretty much what Tushara also was asking. Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm still not sure if I'm the right person to answer you because I have not touched plastics still as a material. But as far as I know, how would you want to use the material? Can somebody like have a conversation like this with this question? So when they say upcycle plastic, is this something which has the grade which can be recycled plastic or whatever? I'm just asking a question to understand your thought process more.
Hello, sir. This is Pavitra.
Hi. Yes.
So this upcycled plastic that I'm looking at is where the plastic waste is actually shredded, and then the techniques that I've come across is where they can be molded into different forms, and so they're actually right now they're actually being used in low cost construction in few countries like Brazil and all of that.
Okay.
So I want to know what are the ways can this material. So they're molded and they're kind of so they're interlocked. So the form is made in such a way that you can interlock the bricks together vertically.
Yes. Okay. And do they also have statistics or data which says about what will happen when it is exposed to direct sunlight? Does it kind of emit any kind of gases? Because see, plastic, I think when exposed to the solar radiation, so how will it be emitting? Does not get exposed to the elements like natural elements.
So based on the research and the product they've come up with, so the product doesn't emit any harmful substances.
Toxic substances. Okay. Okay.
And it is resistant to water and.
I think plastic as a material is highly resistant to water. So it is exactly like if you want to understand, if you look at these tile roofing, the traditional tile roofing and all that, the way you detail the junctions. So you will have to develop your molds in such a way that you need to understand a bit of construction. I think you need to understand how water behaves if you want to seal water. My still concern is you might have to do a lot more of research to understand, even though the literature what is available to you says that it does not emit. So we need to understand how it does not emit, because as so that it kind of lets you explore the material further, and it can be shaped to different molds. So it's a material which is highly plastic in nature. Like it is plastic and it has plasticity. So you can shape it to different forms. So try to understand what kind of a structure you would want to build with. Like if you want to just use interlocking, probably structures which are closer to the compressive models what we are talking about. See, if you look at the Rhino vault and all what I've been talking about, which we are using for the brick vaulting, similar structures should be highly possible using these plastic molds.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So any form. That's why I said I was giving you the example of this project called Armadolon. And you can also see the same. He's a structural engineer, basically. Philip Block is a structural engineer, really doing some amazing work. So they're also using recycled. I think there was also this kind of a foam sheets and all that. So the people have been working on it, but it's not like a real-time structure. They are doing more installations in the beginning. So personally, I don't know plastics still. We haven't touched that, or we have not gone into that. So I might not be answer you very precisely as to this is how you should be doing that. But if you ask me anything, what we have been doing with these compressive kind of forms using these vaults and all that, you should be able to design structures like that. Because we need to understand, you can probably talk to a structural engineer and understand the compressive and the tensile forces, how the plastic would actually perform when you have these different forces coming up. So that's very important. So maybe we should be able to take it further. Maybe if there is an opportunity to talk to you next time, I can probably do some study, understand, and probably we can have a conversation.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Yeah, sure. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir. This is Savana.
Hi. Yes.
Okay. So this is regarding the stone construction. So I had a small doubt. So this system where you've used only joinery details. So does it work just with one story, or can you go ahead with many stories? Because it's also very common in Bangalore, and I have seen in many temples where I've used trabeated construction, but it's sort of limited to just one story. So
not really. See, I think if I just go back to the slide, I think this is where we are kind of, this is our area of interest or whatever. So so you just want to use stone as smaller panels, as I was quickly running through these slides. So these are some of the processes which has come through, but when you sit with a structural engineer, he would always look at it from the way the forces are addressed and all that. So we are just trying to see how this story can actually expand further, and we could come out with solutions which are like unconventional. So this is already the first step, I would say. And you can also look at works of architect Kengo Kuma, Japanese architect.
Yeah. And he's mainly used wood, and he has come up with multiple stories, but I don't know if that will work for stone. That was little
he has also very recently done an installation in stone. It's not a structure out of stone, but an installation in stone where they're using the techniques what they actually use with wood. But he also says that wood and stone don't behave in the same way, so they would have used a different kind of screw details to kind of have one. It is interlocked, and then you still have a screw which goes through and through. So you can probably look at the installation. I think Deepak sir should be able to like show you the video. I think he's the one who shared that video with me. So I think there is a lot of potential. We are in the early days in terms of trying to understand stone. It's like it takes 2 or 3 years for you to like really touch the material, feel it, understand. And then even the structural engineer has been advising me. He said, don't push the project in the first step itself. He says, you throw an idea, and then this idea, you might take it in 2-3 different directions, and there will be people who would want to take it up to the next level. So it's something which will kind of start as a evolution to this house or to this project what we are working with. So we are already keeping that in mind. And even Philip Block's project I was talking about, Armadolon, which does not use any glue or mortar. So he is also doing that. So gravity glue, the artists who work with pebbles. Have you seen something called a concept called the gravity glue?
No, sir.
Yeah, they're like very interesting, where you will see these stone artists who would just stack up odd shaped stones one above the other.
Okay.
So that's an amazing piece of engineering. And I have also seen somebody build an arch out of that without any glue. So you take all the pebbles or the stones that are of different shapes, and then somebody would build an arch out of it. So if you can build an arch, you can build a vault, you can build a space, literally.
Yes.
So I think it is for us to understand the material slowly and then keep pushing at every given opportunity to kind of take it forward.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, sir.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, sir. Here. So my site is next to Jigini. It's near Bannerghatta. Even I had the same issue. How like all the quarries have stopped there. And you were talking about how you refurbish stone from. Can you like explain about the process? Like from where did you get?
It is highly political.
No. From where did you get it?
I'll tell you.
Okay.
No. See, the quarries have been stopped, but there are a lot of stones which are left over. Which like one of the quarry very close to my site went through this some post legal cases and all that, so it's been on hold, but there are few people who are still doing it actually, and not unofficially, officially they have been doing it, and a lot of places have these blocks cut and left over as blocks. So whatever has been cut, you can actually see. The advantage I'm having is I am staying in a layout called Pride Vatica, and this quarry was within the layout itself. So only the issues will come when somebody has to take that stone out, go to the road and like cross the police checkpost or whatever. So since we were sitting right around the community, so we were not having much of issues. And in fact, I'm getting a lot of stone locally there. I think you will have to walk around. I walked some 7 kilometers on one day, looking around for all the nearby stone suppliers. You will find every 500 meters one guy who has piled up these size stone masonry and random rubble. You will see these boulders or the unsized stone masonry, not masonry, stones available. So please come down. I'm also sitting in Jigini, so I can walk you around and show you the possibilities of getting stones. Yes.
Thank you. And what about the joinery? So you were talking about the joinery you were trying. Can you just explain a little more about that? How you?
Yeah. See, these are traditional joineries. If you see, these are for stone columns. So you might have limitations in terms of, this is like a dovetail. Like if you understand wooden joinery, I think it's a similar process in stone, where you can actually put the stone, interlock them, and then you put a load on top. They become very stable. They don't move in axis, or neither do they slip out of the context. All right. So this is one, and what we are trying to do specifically in our project is, I think these slides. Can you see this junction?
Yes, I can see
what I'm highlighting. So it's with the support of the structural engineer, we are able to resolve it. It's not just as an architect. So I came up with the concept, and then he told me what best way to interlock it. Like what will be the best possibility of interlocking stones together. We were trying out in a different combination, but he says when you interlock it in a certain way like this, then there will be more tensile forces in a certain point. There will be more compressive forces in a certain point. So he came out with a solution where he had solved that and given us this layout. So you will have to like sit with the engineer who will be able to advise you on what kind of interlocking you need to do for different conditions of your junctions. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's time to wrap up. It's 8:20, and Deepak, unfortunately, Senthil, he's got internet issues, so he's not able to do the honors.
Okay.
So guys,
not a problem.
I'm sure, I think it's been amazingly animated, both from the speaker's side as well as the students. They did not need any prompting this time, Senthil. So that's a huge compliment to you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you ever so much. It's always wonderful to hear you talk. I mean, it's really very inspiring. I was just telling Deepak also, because the passion with which you talk about your work, that's what Seema also mentioned in the chat box, and Anuradha as well. It's always really infectious, and I hope that your talk gives our students a lot more food for thought, and also the incentive to work harder, because they think a lot, but sometimes there's something lost between thinking and actually doing stuff. That's true for all of us, right? So thank you so much on behalf of our studio and all the other participants as well. And we hope to see you in person sometime very soon, and looking forward to hearing about your Jigni project sometime in the near future. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I lost you in the last few seconds.
No, I said we look forward to hearing about your new projects the next time. Your Jigni project sounds exciting. So
yes, yeah. Please do come down once something, when it reaches a certain stage. I'll invite you all. We can have a session there.
We'll look forward to that. That'll be fantastic.
Yeah,
Deepak,
my pleasure. Thank you so much, Salila.
Thanks, Senthil. Okay, then take care.
Yeah,
good night, everyone.
Yeah, take care.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Deepak is
so I think we will be coming. A big group will come there and
sure. Please.
We'll have a picnic there at some point. Okay.
Done. Great. Yeah, pleasure. My pleasure. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Yeah.